Most people lose the battle before their day even begins. They wake up tired, immediately grab their phone, scroll through bad news, compare themselves to strangers, fill their minds with noise before they even leave bed, and then they wonder why they feel anxious, distracted, and mentally exhausted all the time. But nearly 2,000 years ago, one man followed a completely different morning routine, a routine so powerful that it helped him rule the largest empire on earth during one of the darkest periods in Roman history. His name was Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, a Stoic philosopher, a man surrounded by war, betrayal, pressure, disease, and death. And yet somehow, he remained calm, not perfect, not emotionless, but disciplined. Because every morning, before facing the chaos of the world, Marcus Aurelius prepared his mind for battle. And what is fascinating is this: his morning routine was not designed to make him rich, not designed to make him famous, not designed for productivity hacks or motivation. It was designed for something much deeper, to make him mentally unbreakable. In this video, you will discover the morning routine of Marcus Aurelius and why these ancient habits still have the power to completely transform modern lives. And by the end of this video, you may realize the real enemy ruining your mornings is not lack of time, but lack of control over your own mind. Marcus Aurelius believed the first moments after waking up were dangerous, because that is when weakness speaks the loudest, that voice telling you to stay in bed, to avoid responsibility, to escape discomfort. He wrote about this struggle constantly in his private journal. In fact, one morning he wrote something brutally honest to himself. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. Think about that. Even the emperor of Rome struggled to get out of bed. Even one of the most disciplined men in history fought laziness, resistance, and mental exhaustion. That matters because modern people often imagine strong individuals as naturally motivated. But Marcus Aurelius understood something deeper. Discipline is not the absence of resistance. Discipline is acting despite resistance. And every morning he reminded himself that comfort was dangerous, because the longer a person obeys comfort, the weaker they become. Modern life has made this problem worse than ever. People wake up and immediately seek stimulation, notifications, messages, entertainment, social media. Their minds become flooded before their feet even touch the ground. And without realizing it, they begin their day reacting instead of leading. Marcus Aurelius did the opposite. Before dealing with the outside world, he focused on mastering the inner world first. That was the foundation of his morning routine. Mental preparation. Because he knew something terrifying about life. The world is unpredictable. People will disappoint you. Stress will appear unexpectedly. Problems will arrive without warning. And if your mind is unprepared, the day controls you instead of the other way around. That is why Marcus Aurelius spent his mornings preparing psychologically for difficulty. Not hoping the day would be easy, preparing for it to be difficult. This idea sounds strange today because modern culture worships comfort. But Stoicism was built on a completely different philosophy. The Stoics believed suffering, stress, and frustration were unavoidable parts of life. So instead of pretending bad things would never happen, they trained themselves mentally to face them calmly. Marcus Aurelius even wrote that every morning he reminded himself he would meet people who were selfish, dishonest, arrogant, and difficult. Imagine how powerful that mindset is. Most people get emotionally destroyed because they expect life to go perfectly. So when problems appear, they panic. But Marcus Aurelius expected challenges, which meant he was rarely shocked by them. And this is one of the biggest reasons modern people feel overwhelmed constantly. They are mentally unprepared for reality. One bad comment ruins their day. One stressful situation destroys their focus. One failure makes them question their entire future. Marcus Aurelius believed emotional suffering becomes much worse when the mind is weak and surprised. That is why his mornings were not about motivation. They were about preparation. Imagine a Roman emperor waking up before sunrise while an empire depends on his decisions. Wars happening across borders, political enemies watching closely, disease spreading through cities, thousands of soldiers waiting for orders. The pressure alone would mentally destroy most people today. Yet Marcus Aurelius still made time each morning to discipline his thoughts. Why? Because he knew the quality of your mind determines the quality of your life. And maybe that is the real reason so many people feel lost today. Their minds are constantly distracted. They consume endless information, but rarely sit alone with their own thoughts. Marcus Aurelius did the opposite. Silence was part of his strength. Reflection was part of his routine. Every morning, he examined himself honestly, his fears, his weaknesses, his emotions, his responsibilities, not to shame himself, but to remain aware of himself. Modern people avoid this kind of self-reflection because it is uncomfortable. It is easier to distract yourself than confront yourself. Easier to scroll endlessly than sit quietly with your thoughts. But Marcus Aurelius believed self-awareness was necessary for growth, because you cannot control a mind you refuse to observe. And honestly, this might be one of the biggest differences between ancient philosophy and modern culture. Modern culture tells people to escape discomfort. Stoicism teaches people to face discomfort directly. That is why Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that life is temporary. Every morning he reflected on mortality, not in a depressing way, in a clarifying way. Because when you remember life is short, pointless distractions begin losing power over you. Petty drama feels smaller. Ego becomes less important. Time becomes more valuable. Most people live as if they have unlimited tomorrows. Marcus Aurelius knew that was an illusion. Thousands of people died around him constantly because of war and plague. Death was not an abstract idea to him. It was reality. And instead of making him hopeless, this awareness made him focused. Because he understood something modern society forgets. A person who remembers death begins living differently. They stop wasting energy on meaningless things. They stop delaying important actions. They stop allowing fear to control every decision. And maybe that is why Marcus Aurelius treated mornings with such seriousness. He understood every morning was another chance to become better before life eventually ends. But there was another important part of his routine: purpose. Marcus Aurelius believed human beings suffer deeply when they lose purpose. That is why every morning he reminded himself of his duty, not his feelings, not his temporary emotions, his duty. Today, people are controlled by mood. If they feel motivated, they work. If they feel tired, they quit. If life becomes difficult, they escape. But Marcus Aurelius believed discipline mattered more than emotion, because emotions change constantly. Purpose remains, and this mindset helped him survive unbelievable pressure. Imagine leading an empire while fighting your own fears privately. Because despite his strength, Marcus Aurelius was still human. He still experienced anxiety, stress, fatigue, doubt. But his routine helped him regain control before the chaos of the day began. That is why mornings matter so much psychologically. The first hour of your day often shapes your mental state for the next 12. If your morning begins with distraction, stress, and chaos, your mind carries that energy all day long. But if your morning begins with awareness, discipline, and clarity, you move through the world differently. Marcus Aurelius understood this nearly 2,000 years before smartphones existed, which is honestly terrifying when you think about it. Ancient philosophy often understood human psychology better than modern society does, because today people are constantly stimulated but rarely mentally trained. They consume motivation endlessly while remaining emotionally weak. Marcus Aurelius would probably look at modern society and immediately notice something dangerous. Most people have lost control over their attention, and once attention disappears, discipline usually follows. That is why his morning routine was built around reclaiming control over the mind itself, not chasing pleasure, not chasing comfort, mastery. And maybe this is the part people misunderstand most about Stoicism. Stoicism is not about becoming cold or emotionless. Marcus Aurelius was not a machine. He felt pain deeply. He lost children, faced betrayal, experienced grief, carried enormous responsibility. But Stoicism taught him how to suffer without collapsing. That is the difference. Anyone can remain calm during easy times. The real test begins when life becomes heavy. And Marcus Aurelius prepared for that test every single morning. Not perfectly, not magically, consistently. That consistency changed history itself. Because imagine if the Emperor of Rome had been mentally weak. Imagine if pressure controlled his decisions, if anger controlled his leadership, if fear controlled his actions. Entire wars could have unfolded differently. History itself may have changed. And this reveals something powerful. Private habits create public consequences. The routines nobody sees often shape the destiny everybody sees later. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. That is why he treated mornings almost like mental warfare. Because before fighting problems in the outside world, he first fought weakness inside himself. And honestly, modern people may need this philosophy more than ever. Because today, distractions are endless. People wake up and instantly lose focus. Their attention gets pulled in 100 directions before breakfast. And over time, this destroys mental clarity completely. Marcus Aurelius believed clarity was power. A disciplined mind becomes harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to break. And maybe that is the real lesson hidden inside his morning routine. It was never truly about mornings. It was about becoming stronger than your impulses, stronger than laziness, stronger than distraction, stronger than fear. Because eventually your habits shape your identity. The things you repeatedly do become the person you eventually become. And Marcus Aurelius understood that every morning was shaping his character, either toward discipline or toward weakness. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is waking up already overwhelmed by life, already anxious, already mentally exhausted, already feeling behind. Marcus Aurelius would probably tell that person something simple but powerful. Your mind becomes stronger when you stop feeding it chaos every morning, because peace is not something you accidentally find. Peace is something you train yourself to create. That is why the morning routine of Marcus Aurelius still matters after nearly 2,000 years. Not because it was perfect, but because it was built on timeless truths about human nature. Control your attention. Prepare for difficulty. Accept discomfort. Remember, life is temporary. Focus on purpose instead of emotion. Simple ideas, but powerful enough to shape an emperor, and maybe powerful enough to change your life too.